All right, good question. So PCBs stand for polychlorinated biphenyls. These are groups of man-made chemicals that were originally manufactured by Anniston Ordnance Company in Anniston, Alabama back in 1927, and Monsanto ultimately was responsible for about 99% of PCB manufacturing in the United States. They were used as additives to many commercial and residential products, including dielectric fluids like in transformers and electrical components. Coatings, adhesives, caulkings, gaskets, so a lot of stuff that IUPAT members might actually be exposed to and work around or work with. Some coatings and caulking also contain upwards of 100,000 ppm of PCBs, which is significantly high concentrations for something that's that toxic. Due to their toxicity to humans and the environment, they were banned by the EPA in 1979 under the Toxic Substance Control Act. Their PCBs are classified as probable human carcinogens and are listed in the top 10% of EPA's most toxic chemicals. They cause a wide variety of health effects for humans, including affecting the nervous system, liver, kidney, reproductive system, respiratory illness, such as asthma, and developmental issues. And there are more health effects than these, but that's about all we have time to promote right now. So that's a really good question. And yes, there are a lot of stickers out there. In fact, sometimes when you take OSHA classes, you might get an OSHA sticker to put on there. So that's a good question. I'm going to take the reply to this mainly out of an OSHA letter of compliance that was answered by Fairfax, dated 10/23/2009. If you're not familiar with OSHA letters of appliance, they are interpretations from different districts of OSHA, regions of OSHA, and for all intents and purposes, they become part of that standard. If you ever have a question about what an actual OSHA standard means in reference to something that concerns you at work, and you can't get it answered just by the language of the standard, consider looking up, what you're trying to figure out and see if there's an OSHA letter of interpretation that has answered that question for you, or at least gives you a little bit better understanding of the standard issue at heart. So the specific requirements for head protection, protective helmets basically, are outlined in 29 CFR 1910-135, which incorporates by reference ANSI Z89 1-1986, Z89 1-1997, Z89 2003 as well. Both CFR 1910-132 and 1910-135 do not contain provisions that explicitly prohibit painting or the placement of adhesive stickers on helmets. However, the employer's ability to comply with the existing requirements of these standards may be adversely affected by painting or placing of adhesive stickers on the helmet shell. So I don't want to go through reading what this letter of interpretation says. I'd like folks to be able to refer to it themselves and read it, but in a nutshell, anything that you do to your hard hat that makes it difficult for you to inspect it, because part of that, the requirements is that you can inspect that head protection, continuously as you're using it, right, throughout its working life, and check it for damage, cracks, if it's starting to wear down, anything like that. So if you're painting it, putting stickers on it, and it makes it impossible or hard for you to determine if it's starting to fail, then that would not be allowed. Because as soon as you notice that it's starting to fail, if it's having any of the structural, flaws, anything like that, you've got to take it out of service and your employer will give you a new one. Same with painting. Another issue is depending upon what you put on it, there might be some solvent or something in that adhesive sticker or the paint that you put on that might actually degrade the hard shell of that, that plastic material. That's designed to protect you from impact or puncture. So that's really the intent of talking about, painting and putting stickers on. They want to make sure, OSHA does, that you're able to effectively inspect it, and also that you're not going to put anything on that hard hat that's going to degrade it, both making them, more difficult to comply with the standard. So, but again, check that Fairfax letter so you can read it for yourself, and that should hopefully answer this question pretty explicitly. Okay, so all PPE required by an employer ultimately falls to that employer as far as being responsible for it. Protective headgear must meet ANSI standard Z89.1, 1997, 2003, and 2009, or provide an equivalent level of protection. And you can see 1926.100 head protection. Even if you bring your own to use, the employer must still ensure that it's adequate. So you can look at section 1926.95B of the construction standard, or 1910.132B of the general industry standard. And you can find these requirements generally under 1910 subpart I or 1926 subpart E, which basically cover PPE in general. So this is a really good question. So protection standards, don't require logs to be kept for fall protection. However, it's best to practice and create and maintain maintenance inspection records, and these should be kept on site in an accessible area for workers. Personal fall protection system inspections are required under the standard 1910.140 C18 and under the construction standard 1926.502 D21 are required both for initial use and before each work shift. And fall protection training logs are required under the standard 1926.503B to ensure that workers were trained by a competent person for the inspection of fall protection systems. Lastly, as a best practice, additionally and annually, this doesn't make sense, Gavin. Sorry, I'm gonna have to redo this one.
You can pick it up from there. Just give it a beat and I'll edit the two pieces together. So pick it up from where you stumbled.
Okay. Lastly, as a best practice, in addition, an annual documented inspection should be performed by a trained, competent person to the criteria set forth by the manufacturer and user instruction manual provided with the equipment at the time of shipment. It's always good to be able to document that you're doing whatever it is in accordance with OSHA regulations, standards of care and professional practice. And if you don't have documentation, it's going to be very hard for an employer to back up that something actually happened. I'm going to give you, an answer based on EPA, but regardless, whatever state you work in, whatever state that job is in, you want to make sure that you're following the state protocols because they could be stricter than what EPA has on the books, including training. Also, you want to make sure that you are following any local jurisdiction protocols. For instance, New York City, they created guidelines for responding to mold abatement jobs. And they're pretty encompassing and they were so well done. That's sort of the standard of care that we use nationally is what came out of the New York City Health Department. So to answer the question, according to the EPA, this would likely be classified as type 2 asbestos work, requiring 16 hours of special operations and maintenance training. You would also have to comply with your state's asbestos regulations. There's also OSHA, right? So this 2-day OSHA asbestos operations and maintenance initial training course, considered OSHA type, class 3 work, is designed for custodial and maintenance individuals who perform duties where asbestos containing material is likely to be disturbed. This falls under NESHAP, and which is an EPA regulation, and EPA has written guidance letters concerning such. So I guess in a nutshell, something to be aware of, if you're going to be doing work on, any building facility, mechanical component, historically where asbestos could be, let's say if you think it was, 1980 or earlier, right? Give yourself a year or so buffer. If the employer or the job owner can't guarantee by showing you some kind of due diligent testing that it's not asbestos containing material, you have to assume it is. And whether it's assumed asbestos containing material or that it actually is, and you're going to disturb it, you got to make sure that you've got the right training to do so. So again, whatever municipality you're working in whatever state, make sure that you've got the right training from your employer to do that work, because it's not going to be good, one, for your health, right? We want to make sure that first you are handling either the potential or confirmed asbestos containing material appropriately and that you've got the right PPE, you're using the right containment and control methods for your safety, but also as a public good, because if you have fugitive fibers get released in a building, they're going to be very difficult to clean up. And in fact, I've been on jobs where I've had to come in and do fugitive emissions testing to see how far contamination spread when it was released in a certain area. And I've seen some pipe lagging fall off in one mechanical room of a basement, and the whole entire basement tested positive for fibers. So that whole basement had to be abated. So it's really important that your employer is giving you the correct training to handle either assumed asbestos material or confirmed asbestos material in accordance with local, state, and federal regulations. So that's a really good question. Yeah, so this is really important, to be aware of. The iFTI did put out, a link to the FDA fact sheets, and actually more than a fact sheet, it was a warning. So these are hand sanitizers, and they could be very serious if you use them, especially in the amounts that we are now using hand sanitizer, which is, constantly throughout the day. It's perhaps most potentially dangerous to children if ingested, but it could be dangerous as well when applied to the skin, or vapors are inhaled as well. And the FDA states that all exposed are at risk. So if you're exposed to something, right, you've taken it out of the container or whatever, you've used it, you've breathed it in, it was in your general environment, your work area, that's considered exposure, right? So you don't have to know that you inhaled the vapors, right? You were exposed to them if they were there or not. And obviously if you put it on your hands, you're exposed to it. So according to the FDA, if you were exposed to these hand sanitizers, you are at risk. So why are these hand sanitizers so dangerous? They're made with methanol, which is wood alcohol, and not the ethanol or isopropanol that we use for hand sanitizers that are safe to use under normal daily use. So this methanol-based hand sanitizer, if this stuff gets into your body, can lead to toxic effects when it gets metabolized. So, metabolizing means your body takes something, it's going to break it down, either to eliminate it from your body, to use some of it as food, whatever. There's a bunch of different process that your body does when it takes in chemicals, whether it's food or a hazardous chemical. So what it does when it metabolizes methanol is it's going to turn it into formaldehyde and formic acid. These are not things that are good, even in small levels for your body. This can lead to a number of issues such as nausea, vomiting, headaches, blurred vision, permanent blindness, seizures, coma, permanent nerve damage, kidney damage, and potentially death if the exposure amounts were high enough. The FDA has stated that in its warning that consumers exposed to methanol hand sanitizers seek immediate treatment, which is critical in the reversal for potential toxic effects. So again, the words that FDA is using here, it's pretty strong language, right? So it's saying if you're exposed to it, if you've used it, seek immediate treatment. So I suggest you check the labels of the hand sanitizers, that you're using. Refer to that FDA warning. So they've put out 2 warnings. One initially, I think, covered 8 or 11 sanitizers, and then they put out another warning just a day ago for some more that they added to the list. And these are all manufactured from a company based in Mexico. And I know the FDA did reach out to Mexico and said, take this off the shelf, stop producing these. It's not clear to me right now if Mexico has indeed done that and take them off the market. And who knows already how much of that is out there or already released into, the country that's been in general use now and for sale. You should be cautious of this for the foreseeable future. If you have the methanol-based hand sanitizers, you should save the bottle, give it to your doctor, call your doctor and follow their guidance. If you are or have been using these hand sanitizers and have had any of the mentioned health effects, you need to get medical help ASAP. And the reason why I want you to save the bottle, if you're poisoned, you call poison control, they're going to ask you what you might have taken. And the best way for, a professional medical care provider to help you is to know exactly what you put on you, took into your body, et cetera. So if you can, save that, give that to them, they can dispose of it for you, but they're also going to be able to look at that and determine exactly what was in that product. And they also have the ability to seek further information from a manufacturer in case there was some kind of trade secret or something. So it's very important that you contact your care provider if you've used it, and especially if you've had symptoms after using it.